Welcome to Secret Ops, the podcast uncovering the world of operations, one episode at a time. I'm your host, Ariana Cafone, and today's guests are Antonia Landi and Joy Chatterjee, co-founders of One Camp, which is a business that is bringing the product and data teams together to help fuel what you do as a business in a better way. Now, this one is good because we have Antonia coming from the land of product management, product operations, quality assurance, and we've got Joy coming from the world of data science, machine learning, big data. And these two wonderful human beings saw that there was a gap in how product and data teams are working together. And they have a mission to solve that along with their co-founder, Pierre. So we dive into their world today, understanding how you can instill their mindset into your business and ultimately become better at what you do through looking through the lens of someone else. All right, let's check it out. Antonia, Joy, thank you so much for coming on to Secret Ops. For context for our listeners, a couple months ago, I came onto your show, Pod, and we were able to talk about all things operations, the difference between product ops and business operations, how data is threading through both of those things. And so now we're flipping the script and you're coming onto Secret Ops to bring that to life for us. So to kick off for our listeners, can you talk about how you two met and why you started working together? Where did this all come from? Where did it start?
It feels like I've known you for a lifetime, to be honest. But we met at an OKR meetup, out of all things. And I was introducing product operations and how we can help with OKRs. And Joy was coming from the data side, right? And what this means for product folks and OKRs. And we realized that we're basically trying to do the same thing, but from different camps, right? I was in the product camp, he was in the data camp, but our messaging was very much the same, and it was talk to each other, right? Look, let's get into the same room and let's do what we do better by our combined efforts.
Now, Joy, you're coming from the world of data science, machine learning, deep learning. Antonia, we've got product management, product operations, quality assurance. So in a lot of ways, if you're not in those worlds, you would say this fusion does not make sense. Cannot compute the fusion between these two things. But in this sort of mutual mission that you all have set out together, it's bridging the gap between product operations and data teams. Now, can you talk about, first of all, why do you think that's not happening and the importance of it?
Unfortunately, there's not one answer. There's always a variety of sources that lead up to it. But, you mentioned that the fusion doesn't make sense, but if you really look at teams today, they work together every single day. Maybe not directly, maybe through like requests on Jira, but every single day, someone from product or sales or any business team makes a request because they have some question, some hunch that they need to validate with data. And the data teams just see that over the fence and go, oh, okay, so now I guess we need to build a dashboard, insight, report, whatever. So this exists, but it's so bifurcated in terms of like we do our thing and you do your thing, that the concept of getting together is, yes, indeed foreign. And formal processes are even like a higher bar. There isn't even a room for where people go like, yeah, I can get in there, and so can the product team. And that's just where we are. So, yeah.
Antonia, from the product side, where do you think that blocker stems from? Is it fear? Is it, honestly, you're balancing so many things? It's like, yes, we need to deal with this, but I'm putting out fires here. Where do you think that block in communication is coming from your view and your experience?
Yeah, so it's super, super interesting because if you speak to any PM, anyone would be telling you like, yes, data is super important. Right? We need to be able to see how people are using our products. We need to be able to see if there's any changes in that. We want to see whether the features we shipped are successful or not based on the criteria we set. And then you probe a little further and it's like, I look at this dashboard maybe once a month. I was like, okay, do you know what this metric actually means? And they're like, I think I do. I was like, right. And you probe further and further. And I think there is actually quite a lot of insecurity when it comes to product people managing data and deriving insights from data. I think part of it is just it is kind of scary, like especially when you have lots of data and very big amounts of data and you don't really know how to navigate it yourself. Changing that is actually accessibility, how we access that data, which tools they are in, but also how we talk about the data that's there, and not using data teams as like a service center, essentially putting in a request, right? Saying, I want to know this, this, and this very specifically. And instead, really actually seeing them as the experts they are and the partners in crime that we can have to better understand what's going on in our business.
Makes sense. I mean, from the ops side, business operations, I feel like one day everybody was like, yo, where's the dashboard for this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, have you run the analytics? I'm like, what are you saying? And all of a sudden it was like this term, all these terminology were being thrown at me to say, I've heard this is important. And then it was assumed that I should have those skills to do that. Right. When really we're all onboarding into this. There was also separation because we didn't have the tools yet, the low code tools, right? Where people who weren't technical could actually understand how to do those things. How do you start to get people within the data world to communicate what they do to non-data people, but without it taking over your whole job? My assumption is you could literally spend all day telling people how and why and what to do, but then you actually can't do the thing that moves the dial forward. So what are some tips that you've learned in helping people who aren't from your background learn what to do?
I think it's recommended that you can at least walk the walk a little bit, because it's kind of like having a car. You don't need to be a mechanic, but if you can't understand where the engine is, or where, like, if you can't understand even the basic parts of it, even explaining what's wrong to a mechanic is going to be very difficult. Then the onus falls on us of saying, okay, what we need to do now is not use terminology that will alienate you, because and it's a bit more nuanced, because the way we are taught in school and when I went to university was this: if you didn't speak in technical terms and if you didn't go deeper and dived into the nitty gritties, then you were probably not an expert on it, and you were questioned, right? Like, why is he or she being so superficial? Like, let's get into the weeds. And that's exactly what hurts when you're getting into the weeds with a product manager, and you can see the light go out of their eyes, because you're somehow explaining model bias, and they're thinking, like, if it was just another person in this meeting, I would be so grateful. But yeah, I think that's something I'm striving to do, is use language that everybody gets, and use, like, there's nothing to hide here. Like, transparency is something we're always, at least people who are confident of what they're doing and not making it up, transparency is always motivated, right? Like, hey, this is what you asked me to do, this is how I did it based on my knowledge, and of course I don't know these assumptions, but here's what it is. And what that does is it, like, brings us down. Like you said, we're not scared of, like, oh my god, he's gonna say some other word and I have to pretend like I know it. No. So, like, it's better if you just use simple language, and you can connect with them to a point where they can ask intelligent questions, where they say, I understand this, but I don't know why we did that, and what was the limitation for that. So I think that's what we can do better, I would say.
Now, the two of you are in fields that are rapidly evolving at a speed that is mind-numbing, to say the least. And when it comes to product operations, we talked about this on your show pod, where it's evolving. It's sort of come out of the last couple of years. And I think same, data science has always been there, but how that looks like in business, again, is just sort of changing every couple months. In educating people and helping people to instill both things in their own business, where do you begin? And do you think there's certain size businesses that are better than others to start these things?
Just to preface this, every so often this question of, do we need product ops emerges? And actually, it's the wrong question to ask. Product operations is simply a byproduct of doing product, right? You're simply, you are managing how you get work done. Now, how actively you're managing that with how much intention you're managing that is a different question. But I think it's almost a moot point saying, do we need product ops? Well, you already have it, whether you like it or not. So I typically say once you've got 8 to 10 product managers, you will start having alignment issues, collaboration issues that you cannot simply solve by getting everyone in one room together. That's when you need to start becoming more intentional. Now, whether that means hiring a full-time specialist or whether that means having this as a shared responsibility is really up to the organization, but you need to talk about it, right? First and foremost, this can no longer be shadow work, and you need to know broadly which direction you're going in.
Shadow work is such a perfect term, I think, for operations in general.
Yeah.
Because, Joy, I feel like all of the good stuff happens to the data teams. I feel like the data teams in the ops eyes are like such a priority right now. Again, because we have all this data and we don't really know what to do with it. So from a business standpoint, a lot of founders, leadership are like, let's figure out what to do with this thing. And so operations, we just sort of like keep up and as we can. And we're this shadow thing that's sort of like the little sibling kind of following you around, being like, can we put this here? And what about this? And maybe we could do this. From your side, though, from a data standpoint, where do you think people begin? And how do you start to combine operations into data together so it's this happy medium?
I mean, it's kind of a very similar answer, but what's interesting is it is the cool stuff. I agree. I think that's why I like it. It's just, you'll be surprised because imagine you like cooking your favorite meal. It's amazing to cook it once, but if you're cooking it every day, twice a day, at some point you will go, yeah, whatever. I don't care. And that's where, when product people take an interest and go like, hey, how did you cook the chicken? You're like, oh, thank God. I can't. Let me tell you, I did this, I did that. It's it's amazing. It's like, we're so bored at looking at Jira tickets and just doing the thing and shipping it over, that when someone, like, for example, says, hey, we're going to have a meeting, discovery or any other product-based meeting, would you like to join? You're like, how do I say yes without being desperate? I mean, sure, I'll do it. Yeah, why not?
No big deal.
No. But I think to answer your original question, like, it's similar to what Antonia said. Always understand what you're optimizing for. And if you're optimizing for, like, I need to get this, I don't know, I'm trying to make cookies sell, like, make cookies and don't worry about the sheets and the process of it, because it's not easy. That's one thing. I mean, I'm glad, because that's why I get paid. But it's not easy to say, okay, we need this infrastructure, we need these BI tools, and just in the snap of a button, we'll just process the data. There's work to be done there, at least to do it properly. And so, if you don't need that pain, if you don't need, because you need to hire people to do that, right? You can't have people just say, hey, could you just log into Amplitude and set up this dashboard? And that's not everybody has the skill, or that person requires a few weeks to get to that point. So I would say, yeah, like, you will start noticing it when you've crossed the point of MVP, and there are questions that you cannot answer with your hunch anymore. Because when you're building something new, you're like, oh, I have this great idea, and I'm sure they'll love it, my ICP or whoever my audience is, and you've built it, and then your audience starts interacting, and you can't answer that without taking surveys, without taking quantitative data, and then you start thinking, I actually really need to, like, I can't just process it in my head. It needs to be recorded, and then I can look at the NPS and say people are not happy about this feature. And so that when you feel that pain, is a good point to then introduce data, because before that, it's a nice to have, but it's not something you'll need on your path to MVP, for example.
Yeah, a lot of the time, the data that you need is the selling. Are we reaching a certain audience, right? You need these sort of like basic sort of, are we hitting these basic points, like you said, Antonia, to keep the lights on, to keep things running. Like, Joy, to your point, it's like, do you really want to open up this can of worms of like how we're quantifying all this? And sometimes I feel like a lot of founders that I work with, it's the same with business operations, where they just sort of feel like things aren't working and it's a hot mess. And I don't like this feeling. And it's more of a feeling than intellectually, like, we need to do an audit of our insurance. And no, it's never that. It's always like, I feel yucky. I'm overwhelmed. I feel like things are always coming up.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think, like, especially for product operations, a feedback I get a lot from clients is like, work is slow and we don't know why. It's that feeling. It's like pulling teeth. All of a sudden, delivering something feels like walking through mud. And I don't know why. Like, we're doing all of the things we were doing 6 months ago, and now we're just really slow with it. And it's like, you might need product operations. And that's exactly that inflection point.
That's a good point. So this gets to my next question, which is, so my pet peeve with operations, business operations, most of the time people come to me and they're like, we need a task management platform. That's what we need. We need to track our tasks so that we can see what teams are doing. And usually that's the least of their problems. That's usually a symptom or a solution to show that there's control when really it's underneath the hood. There's a crazy amount of crazy stuff going on. What, from a product operations standpoint and a data science standpoint, what are things that people come to you and say, it's this thing, but in reality, it's never that thing? Joy, I feel like maybe I hit a mark with that on you.
Yeah, I mean, it would just how many hours do we have? But yeah, it's almost always the case, and I used to take offense to it, but now I just realize it's more like confused people that don't really know, and they're trying to help, because most often the requests already come with solutions. The requests never come as, I would like to answer question A. Could you please help? The request is, I think the answer to question A is X, and it would be great if you could get X as the solution to A. But hey, feel free to research and do your thing. Like, I think most of the things that I'm not fond of is when people make assumptions on content that's not their expertise. And this is something a bit more than just product and data. It's just people like doing that, where they say, yeah, best omelet ever. Everything about eggs, I just know it. Like, every day I make eggs. And I think it doesn't hurt and to say, look, I want to make an omelet, but I just don't know how. I haven't broken eggs in a while. So can you figure it out? And this is something that I think a lot of product teams and teams that I've worked with do a lot, where they want, I mean, we're always encouraged this. I heard this thing called product sense. I didn't know that it was called this, but this exists, where people just have hunches because they've done this in the past. I don't think we discourage it. It's just, don't use that to then drive a solution into a request. You can use that and say, we've done this in the past in this way, but for this case, could you please give us this? And that's much better than already coming and saying, well, let's start tracking this feature. And if you ask them why, they're like, I couldn't hurt, could it? So yeah, I don't know.
Because it causes a lot of work. Hunches are important, right? But hunches have to be followed up. If you're going to cause a lot of work for multiple teams, they have to be really followed up with, why are we doing this? What are we trying to understand? What's involved in this? How long is this going to take? Ultimately, what do we hope? What do we think might happen? It is a can of worms, like we talked about, and coming in with the assumption that this will be easy, let's just do this thing. It doesn't, I think it doesn't create a space for discussion and discovery, which it sounds like for you both is vital. I mean, Antonia, from your side, what do you think people assume about product operations that, really it's like, all right, how do I put this into words for you?
I mean, just like Joy said, how many hours do we have? Because this could go on for a while. Honestly, product ops, because it's still fairly new and few people actually work in companies with dedicated product ops teams, there are so many assumptions behind it. Some people see it as a really assistant to the product manager role, where like product ops folks do everything nobody else wants to do. Some folks see it as a stepping stone into product, which is, to me, actually, it started the other way around, right? It started for people who had extensive product experience to have impact on the organization instead of the product. Yeah, I could go on and on. I think this throwing requests over the fence is definitely also something that we tend to see, where tools is a really common one. I think just like in BizOps, it mirrors your experience exactly, right? We need a road mapping tool. It's like, no, you don't. You need to talk to each other more. Like that's what you want to optimize for. And it's really, you need that innate curiosity. You need that little bit of cockiness to go, are you sure? Are you sure that that's what you actually want? That's what makes a great product ops manager, because at the end of the day, I think it is natural for us as humans to try to want to come up with solutions, right? It's unnatural for us to be able to state the problem clearly and say, help me get to ABC. It's a challenge, but it's a really fun one.
Now, you all wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't love a challenge. And in your combined missions in product operations and data science, you've created OneCamp with your third founder, Pierre. So talk to us about what OneCamp is and what you do with businesses.
The name of OneCamp really came from, we come from different camps, and we wanted to build an environment where any kind of strategy, any kind of product-based operations and solutions that we provide came from a point of, we do this together. So we involve both the data and the product side in the thinking process and the brainstorm phase, and then actually go through the entirety of it. We offer sort of two paths, and we found a pretty fun name for it. There's steps and leaps, right? And so the step is basically, if you're trying to just get into this, they're essentially smaller packets that you can choose to say, okay, I want to learn about how to collaborate better. I want to learn how to do data-driven discovery better, etc. Right? And so you can opt for that, or you can say, I already know. I follow Antonia a lot. We've talked enough, and I've done that. But I would like something more long-term, where now let's hit the rubber on the road and say, okay, how do I get this implemented in the organization?
What you're doing is you're guiding them through an entirely new way of looking at their business and solving problems, right? Even if they've done maybe part of what you all are doing, they haven't done the journey through it. Is there resistance, or is it just a relief to say, oh my God, thank you for enlightening us? Or is it both? I'm guessing it's both.
Honestly, it is both. Like, I do think it starts with a little bit of resistance. People on both camps instinctively go, listen, I do not have time for this. Like, I have a million Jira tickets to action. Like, just let me get back to it. But the thing is, eventually, by working through things together, and literally, as Joy said, simply by putting them in the same room together, they have aha moments that they couldn't have had beforehand, and it almost becomes a case of people completing each other's sentences in that kind of way. And that's when the resistance fades away, and they realize that they're now able to do much more with exactly the same people in their team. And this stuff was happening independently in different corners of the office. And now, purely by giving them a structured way of collaborating, they are now able to deliver a much better end product and end result than they were previously, with, like I say, exactly the same people on the team, exactly the same resources, but just powers combined.
Now, last question before we wrap up, as much as I hate to wrap this up, which is, for people who are new in their careers, or maybe they are in the same boat that you all were, what is one tip that you can give them to help their communication tomorrow? If they wanted to instill a better way of communicating in what they do tomorrow, what would you say is the number one thing?
So when I first started doing the first few producty tasks, as I moved from QA to product, one of the first things I did was I created a template for user stories. And literally on every single template of every single user story, at the very bottom was a disclaimer saying, is this understandable to someone without prior knowledge or context? Literally on every single user story. And sit down, ask yourself that question in every Slack message, every email communication, anything you send to a stakeholder, just rereading it through somebody else's eyes. And I think that already goes a long way.
I'm definitely going to put that as a disclaimer now on all my operational things. Joy, how about you?
It's similar because I don't know, I actually discovered this from podcasts. I can't really take credit for it, but like there's this really fun quote that says, we have schools for public speaking, but we don't have schools for public listening. And listening is like, it's almost counterintuitive, but like you definitely can get better at communication if you listen, because, and this is sort of in the vein of what Antonia said, because when you listen, you will understand that the people you're talking to don't get what you're talking about. But more often than not, when we're saying stuff, we're really focusing on like, I have to say these three things, and then when they will pause, I will say the next three things, and then I'm good, right? Because like I got it out of my way. And you're poor at communication because you're not monologuing. And I've found that yes, like if I can put my selfish gene aside and literally listen to what the other person is saying, I can just respond better, right? Because the person will say, yeah, I understood A, B, and C, but D makes no sense to me. And I would, rather than take offense, go like, oh, you didn't, okay, let me just explain why D makes sense. And that makes me a little bit better at communicating, I would say.
Totally. I love that. Communication is not a monologue or a soliloquy. It is a dialogue. Let's leave with some rapid fire questions to get to know you two as human beings. What is the favorite part of your day?
Oh, probably having dinner with my husband. I've really gotten into meal planning, and it's getting more and more elaborate by each week.
Love it. Joy, you?
I can't beat that. But I would say just waking up early, and there's these like hours before 8 where no one's there in the office or no one's up, and you can do whatever you want without emails. It's really nice. Yeah. Just
life without email. What would it be? Fabulous. Okay. What is the most important lesson that you've learned in your life so far?
Feel the fear and do it anyway. I think learning to listen when I get anxious or when something scares me, and then to actively take that as a sign that I should jump headfirst into it, is something that has served me very well and very often.
So I have two, but like one, because it's actually in the vein of what we talked about in communication, and it says nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, which is brilliant. And the other one was, it's actually a wonderful quote by Murakami or something. It says a man for like a person has two lives, and the second one begins when he or she realizes that he only has one.
Okay.
Ooh, both of those
it's really cool.
Tingling.
It's really like
they're so good. Those are, I know, right?
like
okay, now
makes
this
you
one
tingling. Yeah.
Big time, big time. What is the best purchase that you have made under $50?
I mean, it's 60, but I will still tell you it's linen bed sheets and linen bed or like duvet covers. It's incredible, like how much time we spend in bed, but it doesn't register to us because you're not awake. But I can't sleep on cotton sheets anymore. I'm spoiled.
I gotta tell you, I also randomly got linen sheets too. They're legit, and you know what I like about them is they hold up a lot better than like my TJ Maxx buy. I gotta be honest. I love a discount. I love a bargain. But getting those quality sheets, we'll have them for years to come for sure.
Okay, I'll remember that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you better go get some.
Yeah. I'm gonna say my gym membership. Honestly, I think the gym, especially on days where I feel stressed or like things just aren't moving, I feel like it's just a place where I can go do something difficult and feel accomplished. And I feel like sometimes you have those days where it's like, I really need a win today, and the gym does that for you. And yeah, I've really gotten to enjoy it lately. I think it's a good investment.
For sure. Last question for both of you, which is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I would like to, as stupid as it sounds, build or work on something. Like there's this beautiful saying in Buddhism that says like you plant a tree that you'll never get the shade off. Like I want to build something and work on something that I will never ever benefit from, because all our lives, whatever we do, it's watering our own tree. Like even if you have a family and you're raising a family, it's your family, not raising someone else's family. And I would hopefully get to do something one day where I just do it, and like, I don't know, maybe somebody will benefit from it after I'm dead for 20 years. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
Dude, you're coming out with these quotes that are like some profound stuff here.
Right?
It's amazing.
It's not gonna happen, but yeah.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
It's gonna be super cheesy, but fulfilled. Like, I briefly was gonna say happy, but I don't think the path to fulfillment is always a happy one. I think it does tend to also have a lot of struggles. So yeah, I like doing meaningful things, even if they're, and maybe especially when they're quite difficult. I think that's what brings me joy. That's what brings me fulfillment.
Thank you both so much for coming on. This has been such a joy. I've learned so much from your generosity and your experience. If people are listening and they're like, I want to see all the things that they're doing, where can people find what you're doing? LinkedIn for sure, but are there any other places that they should be checking out?
I mean, the pod is on Substack, all the other podcast platforms, and there will be more stuff coming out for sure. But I think for now, LinkedIn's probably still the best place to get in touch with us. And listen, we're always open for a chat, that's for sure.
Great. Thank you both. Again, appreciate you so much. Definitely check out OneCamp. We'll link to that in the description, as well as Pod, their show. Antonia, Joy, you're the best. Secret Ops listeners, you are also the best. Thank you so much for listening or watching wherever you find your podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye.